The House of Tax Policy Committee will come to order. Would the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Neely.
Here.
Representatives Farhat.
Here.
Rixey. Carter.
Here.
Witset.
Here.
Grant.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Van Workum.
Here.
Markkinen.
Here.
Outman.
Here.
Tisdale.
Here.
Hoadley.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Vice Chair Farhat makes a motion to adopt the minutes from September 6, 2023 meeting. Without objections, the minutes are approved. For today's agenda, we will have votes on House Bill 4530, 4531, and Senate Bill 127, testimony and vote on House Bill 4553, 4554, and testimony on House Bill 4724, and testimony on House Bill 4966 through 4970. Now we would take up testimony on House Bill 4966 through 4970. Rep. Young. Do you have anyone else joining you, Rep. Young? Welcome to Tax Policy, Mayor Duggan. You are my second favorite mayor. My first favorite mayor is behind you there. When you guys are ready, you may start.
Okay, there it is. Rewind. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak before you and your members here on Tax Policy. You know, I'm a resident of the city of Detroit, and I know firsthand the burden of the high taxes that we pay in our city. And unfortunately, there really hadn't been any relief in sight. That is until now. That is until the Land Tax Equity Act. It's a step in the right direction towards equity to make the heavy load of property taxes in Detroit shared more evenly across the board. Detroiters pay some of the highest property taxes in the state. I met a young lady who came up to me in a community meeting, and she says, "I'm so glad you guys are doing this, but you got to even do more." And I'm like, man, we got to start somewhere. But I was excited to hear, because she just moved back from the suburbs to the city. She wants to be in the city. And this is a way for us to show Detroiters how much we care. So we pay some of the highest property taxes. Meanwhile, they are those who own vacant properties, abandoned properties, and parcels, and parking lots, and scrap yards, who literally pay pennies compared to the rest of us. In my former life, I used to be a district manager. Mayor knows all about that. District manager, and there we were called the blight managers. And that was our primary task, like to fight blight and improve the quality of life for Detroiters. And so the abandoned and vacant commercial properties and even residential properties just continue to be eyesores and continue to be magnets for illegal dumping. And guess what? The city spends, I can't even imagine how much money on trying to constantly clean up these spots. And at some point, we just had to ask ourselves, when are we going to stop the insanity when it comes to that? When are we going to decide to do something different? And as a result, we're here today, again, talking about the benefits of the Land Tax Equity Act. It's just one tool to help us stop the insanity by requiring property owners of blighted vacant land to pay their fair share and to be incentivized to actually put their property into productive use once and for all and get rid of the blight. The Land Tax Equity Act, on average, would save Detroit property owners 17% on their 2025 property taxes under this plan. Over 95% of Detroiters could see their property tax bills decrease under this act, and guarantees that Detroit homeowners will get no tax increase under this plan. Now, it's come to my attention, and every time I go, I say, well, what about the renters? What about the renters, Representative Price? Well, the renters don't have anything to worry about because they're not the property owners. Now, the one thing we aren't able to do in this legislation is when the landlord does get a reduction, make him pass that on to the renter. I wish we could do that, but we can't do that right now. But I just wanted to go ahead and make certain that renters understand that they're okay, that nothing should really change for them under this proposal. We also looked at our urban farms and our urban farmers and owners of community gardens and community spaces, and they're going to be held harmless. They should not see any type of tax increase. And this was very, very important to me because I represent a community known as Brightmoor, and that's all we have are urban farms and urban and open spaces that people have taken and turned blight to beauty, and they should be okay. I'm thankful today for the support and the leadership of our speaker, Speaker Joe Tate, my caucus colleagues, my colleagues that are on the bill package with me, and for my mayor who is here. We're all united and committed to restoring property tax equity to all Detroiters. Bottom line, and this is the bottom line, property tax bills for Detroiters need to come down. The Land Tax Equity Act does just that, lowering Detroit's taxes, putting our city on par and competitive with surrounding communities like Southfield and Ferndale and Warren and Grosse Pointe. Just have some fair tax rates. What's being proposed today, the Land Tax Equity Act, is laser focused on helping Detroiters keep their hard-earned money in their pockets by way of a property tax reduction. And again, if we continue to do nothing, we'll continue to get the same results. I believe it's time that we put Detroit first. I believe it's time we put residents first. Detroiters happen to be folks that have this saying, nothing about us without us. And so this is enabling legislation. Detroiters get the final say. We're not doing anything against their will. They will have the opportunity to weigh in on this and to see, do I want to cut or do I want to stay and continue to do what I've been doing and continue to get the same results? And so I would urge and welcome your support and the support of your colleagues on this legislation. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Mr. Mayor?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. In light of Representative Young's outstanding presentation, I will be brief. I want to thank Representative Farhat before he leaves, Representative Whitsett, and Representative Tyrone Carter, who have also joined in sponsorship on these bills. We have got the Detroiters who are plugged into the neighborhoods and who understand. Over the years, there's been many times the city of Detroit has been up to this legislature asking for help because they were in financial trouble. We're in a very different situation today. We've had 10 straight balanced budgets. The city is growing, and we're not here asking for you to give us anything. We're asking for the tools to fix something ourselves because the high property tax rates are choking this city. They're choking off small businesses, they're choking off new housing, and they are a terrible imposition on our residents. The average homeowner in Detroit's paying 67 mils, and yet if you go to Southfield, Warren, Grosse Pointe, they're in the 53, 54 mil area. Our residents are having to pay significantly more. And then you look at what's happened with vacant land, which there's so much of it in the city, it has almost no value. The average owner of a vacant residential lot in this city pays $30 a year in taxes. And as a result, there are 30,000 vacant lots owned by private owners who pay their $30 every year to keep it as speculators, hoping someday somebody's going to want to put a big auto factory on it or a housing project, and they are going to get rich. Those 30,000 lots, they don't cut them. The city cuts them 5 times a year. They don't pick up the trash. We pick up the trash. And so when we looked at this, we said, here is a way for us to cut the millage on every improvement, every building, every improvement in the city, 14 mills, double the tax on the underlying land. It means, as Representative Young said, 97% of Detroiters, homeowners get a tax cut. Nobody gets an increase. The folks who probably should have borne more of a burden bear more of it. And here is the thing about it. We just want the right to make our own decision. And I know how jammed your agenda is this session. And the timing of this, the reality is this. We want this cut to take effect in the July 2025 tax bill. By state law, the assessor has to send out the assessment notice in February of 25, which means it takes a year to get the assessment rolls ready. We need an election by the voters of Detroit on the day of the presidential primary to give us that year. And then if you just back up under the election code, that means Detroit City Council has to vote by November to place it on the ballot. So we have a very short window to get this enabling legislation through. And so, Madam Chair, thank you for your courtesy in giving us the time today, and we hope the legislature, we're prepared to answer any questions one-on-one or in groups, but we hope we can get this support relatively quickly. Thank you.
All right, we do have a few questions. Vice Chair Minority Van Workum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have several questions, if that's okay. First one's kind of just a basic question. How is the millage rate determined on the land value tax?
So the 14 mills will come down. Of course, the actual amount is ultimately approved by City Council, and then the Finance Department will calculate the amount of mills that it will require to go on the land, which will be more than a doubling, it'll be close to 100 mills increase on the land. We'll present that to City Council, and City Council will act on that, so they will know.
So is that's based on each parcel then, and each project? The City Council is going to weigh in on what the millage rate
No,
is
it'll be a
going to
flat. It'll be a flat. Today, if you're not on a PRE, the millage rate for land in the city is 85 mills. It'll go up to probably 190 something, but it'll be uniform. The uniformity clause says all land is taxed exactly the same. So when you do that, your average vacant lot goes from 30 to 60 bucks. It sounds like a lot of mills, but there's so little value on the land, it comes out to a small amount of money. But it'll be uniform on everybody.
But so the assessors, are they still involved in the process, or is this all going to be determined by the council?
No. So the council, just as they do today, decides the amount of the bills. The assessor determines the value of the land. That doesn't change. Nothing about the assessment process changes. It's just the amount of mills. Instead of having 20 mills levied on the building, it'll be 6. And instead of having 85 mills levied on the land, it'll be 190. But today, the assessor is valuing the two.
So with that process, and I don't see this in the legislation, if the voters do not like this, is there a way in this legislation that they can cancel this proposal?
Now, this works just like any fire millage or road millage in your community. Voters can approve it. Voters can subsequently rescind it. This falls under all the same constitutional provisions where you can't change property tax without the voters doing it. So the voters didn't like it, they could come back and undo it, just as they could with any other millage.
And then question about Proposal A. Is there protection? Obviously, there are
All the Proposal A
proposals
protections still apply.
because of the limits on 5%
Exactly.
and the
Inflation or
everything will apply.
5% will still be in effect on each of them. We don't change Proposal A or any of those constitutional protections at all.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Rep. Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Young, Mayor Duggan. I have, first of all, I want to state that I really appreciate that you're planning on holding renters, scrap yards, community gardens, and agricultural land harmless. Really, really appreciate that. But my concern is for the current property owners who are delinquent in their taxes or either struggling to upkeep their property. What will happen with them? Will their property be affected by this equity?
So the only thing that will happen is their tax bill will go down. We have in the city of Detroit something called a HOPE exemption, which was authorized by the state legislature. But we have about 10,000 homeowners who are senior citizens below the poverty level. Mm-hmm. They do not have a tax bill. They're exempt. That does not change. So it won't change for them. Anybody who is in the delinquency, we have very few owner-occupied houses anywhere in the delinquency process, so few that the treasurer actually canceled it this year. But what will happen in the future is the size of the tax bill will go down, and that's good for everybody.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Rep.
Now we have Rep. Tisdale.
Thank you, Chair Neely. If this program is effective for the city of Detroit, would you be willing to, or I guess with the sponsor, or is it something you would look at opening to other communities?
So the bill as drafted allows any community to opt in. Whether you want to make this Detroit only, say cities over 500,000, or whether you want to opt in, to me is up to the legislature. But I think as you propose it, it's opt in, isn't it?
That's correct. That's up to us, Representative, how we want to have the final version. But currently, it's opt-in. So any city that would see a benefit of doing this would have an opportunity to do the same thing, take it before their local government for a vote of the people.
That would be okay with the city of Detroit not making it exclusive.
Now, as far as we're concerned, everybody should have a right to make their own decision. You almost would need to have almost the highest property tax rate. We're not going to make money by cutting the property tax rate. Most of our revenue comes from the income tax, and I believe business and people will move in, and we will make the revenues up in the long run, the income tax. You almost need to be a city that has a very high property tax rate, has an income tax, and has land worth almost nothing. I know Mayor Andy Shore has looked at this, and it doesn't work for Lansing. Other mayors are looking at it. But as far as we're concerned, anybody that works for us is fine with us. Or if it causes people anxiety, we don't care if it's Detroit only. It's really a legislature's decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Rep. Grant?
Thank you. And thank you for your testimony on this. I do have one question. Are there any carve-outs or I understand the overall pretense for abandoned property, but also given the timeline for construction and the cost of construction and things right now, I know in my community we're really focusing on having more local, small-scale developers who are right from the community, and they have higher hurdles to cross to really get land from the abandoned, off of that role into use. And something like this could be a hurdle for them. So are there carve-outs for people who may own one property, a small property, and they're actively working to move forward?
So the uniformity clause of the Michigan Constitution does not allow us to have carve-outs. Everybody has to be levied equally. But to accommodate exactly the issue, and of course this is good for small business. This drops the property tax on their businesses, on the buildings 17%. So this is good for small business. The great majority of small business retailers get a significant cut, but we have just added under our new economic development director, Hassan Beydoun, a deputy director of small business whose job it is full-time to help our small businesses work through the things that are barriers, but we can't do it with non-uniform tax levies.
Okay, and just to clarify, I'm sorry on my end, not small businesses, but small-scale developers, so people who are owning these abandoned properties and want to redevelop them, but the process may take them longer because they're not a big company. So you guys will have someone in place to work with them.
So what will happen immediately, and we already are having these conversations, of course, you have people who have sat on abandoned apartment buildings for 15 and 20 years depressing the neighborhood because the taxes were virtually nothing. As they renovate that, they're going to get a huge break. They get a 17% cut on the improvements. We're happy to facilitate as we are now, but as far as I'm concerned, this is what we want. We want them to be financially incentivized not to abandon this property, but develop it, and we will support them, but the 17% cut will be their best support.
All right. Thank you, Rep. Grant. Now we will have Rep. Britsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Young, and Mayor, for your testimony. I have a couple of questions, and I'm wondering, I apologize for getting here late, but I'm wondering, are we going to hear from Treasury or any? Not today. Okay. Okay, so I'm wondering about the homeowner who has a vacant lot next to them that they have turned into their yard and that they own, okay, that they own two lots. One has a house and one does not. Would the process of parcel joining ameliorate the excess land tax ramifications?
So there's a provision in here that you actually don't have to combine the parcels. So the average homeowner gets a cut of $180 or $190. The side lot, and what the representative's talking about, is that we've had 25,000 residents of our city buy a vacant side lot from the land bank, put a garden in, put a swing set in, the like. They're paying $25. It'll go up to about $50. So if you think about it, you're going to get a $180 cut on your main property and a $25 increase on your side lot. It will be very rare that anybody could have a net tax increase, whether you combine the properties or not. But Representative Young, who sold the side lots in her earlier job, made it a point that we wrote in that there's a protection for anybody who bought up to 4 side lots, that they are guaranteed not to get an increase. We'll give them a credit if they run over. Be very rare for anybody to get an increase because of a side lot, but Representative Young has put that provision in there for the credit.
That's very true. That was one of the first things that I talked about. I wanted
Okay,
to be-
I'm so sorry that I missed that.
No, not here, just in
Okay,
general, just
okay,
having the
okay.
conversations about the legislation, making certain that Detroiters who stepped up,
Right.
the house got torn down next to it, it became a dumping ground. They said, oh my goodness, what can I do about this? Well, can I buy the lot? Then we start the whole side lot program.
Yep.
People are buying the lots on the left and the lots on the right and the lots behind them. And the one thing I said, well, how dare we penalize them for doing the right thing?
Right.
And so we've included that in the bill language to be certain that they're taken care of.
Okay, so they don't have to go through and
That's right.
join their property together. Like I live on a corner, and so I had 1.5 lots when I bought my house, and then there was a vacant lot next door, and I bought 1.5 lots, and I joined them, right? So they can't be developed unless someone comes in and splits them. But you're saying you don't need that.
There will be some businesses that will benefit from putting side lots, putting adjoining lots together and unifying them, but for the vast majority of people.
And so that will be a way for someone who, that process is still available for anyone who
It
wanted
is.
to take
There are
advantage of it.
cases where somebody who's got a grocery store and happened to be parking on a lot next door,
Right.
it may be to their benefit to combine the lots. And so the assessor's prepared to do those kinds of things. But for 95 to 98% of people,
That's not the issue.
it won't be
That's
needed.
Okay, thank you. My next question is regarding the uniformity clause. Is there any anticipation that that this will be challenged in court if it's put into place because of the uniformity?
We assume everything is challenged in court. So I'm not promising anybody that, but no, we are on, we believe, rock solid legal ground. The original proposal that I made in May was a much bigger cut that would have taken the state's 6 mil levy. And people argued that you would have a non-uniform issue if the state levied 6 mills every place, but Detroit in this way. And so the lawyers went through and vetted this, and we feel very confident of the position of this new approach. And I'm sure you'll get legal guidance, but we feel like we're on very strong ground, and I will still bet you somebody will sue us.
Okay, and do we have any idea of the cost of implementing this to the state?
Shouldn't cost the state anything.
That's right. I know you and I talked about that.
Fiscal analysis, we'll be getting a fiscal analysis next week.
If I'm right and there's more businesses, the state will pick up income tax, sales tax, corporate taxes, but no, there's no cost to the state in this process.
Okay, then, I think that's all for now. I might have a couple.
Okay.
Thank you, Rep. Britzy. Next, we have Rep. Outman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Rep. Young and Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here. I need some clarity on a comment made from Representative Carter regarding scrapyards.
I think she just misspoke. Scrapyards are not exempt.
That's my question. I'm reading here that they're going to see a 50% increase in property taxes.
That'll be an average.
All right, my question continues, are scrapyards not legitimate businesses? I mean, this seems like we're picking winners and losers here. And
We absolutely do not pick any winners or losers. We are going to levy on every square foot in the city exactly the same millage. We
But-
don't pick winners or losers, but if you look at what's happened in the city of Detroit over the years, because there is virtually no value in the land, you've got 3 movie theaters, 20-some grocery stores, and 420 scrap yards and auto yards. Because why? They could spread over the land at virtually no cost. We've cleaned a lot of it up, and our scrapyard owners we have today are good. They're doing a good job. They're honoring the code. I don't have any problem with them. It's just a function of how many acres they have. They tend to be spread over more acres, and so as a result, their taxes go up. Their taxes are still a lot lower than if they were out in the suburbs, where the value of the land would have been a lot higher, but they won't be next to nothing anymore.
Okay. Madam Chair, can I ask one more question? My next question is, are you open to giving credits to developers that are in the process of pulling permits?
In the process of pulling permits, well, it's not something that we have looked at. I get lots of people who pull permits who don't build. I don't know if I want to incentivize that. If you've got an idea, I'm willing to sit and talk about it, but it's not something we've discussed.
Understood. Yeah. Thank you.
Now we have Rep. Witsett.
Hi, thank you, Representative Young. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask if you could address NEZs. There seems to be some questions regarding those, and if this is going to affect them in some type of negative way. What is the impact for NEZs?
So for those who aren't familiar, the state allows the cities to take up to 15% of their homes and put them in a special district called the Neighborhood Enterprise Zone District, which means you can cut half the city taxes and half the county taxes. So in the city of Detroit today, 100,000 homeowners pay 67 mills, 9,000 homeowners pay 53 mills. For no logic other than the city council put the boundaries on them pursuant to that. That is an inequity that I think most people feel isn't right. And of course, it is the wealthier neighborhoods that have got the 53 mil lower levy. What we are saying is this: the NEZ is a 20% cut, the land value tax is a 17% cut. So you do a little bit better under the NEZ. We're saying if you've got an NEZ, you keep it. Problem is your NEZ only lasts 15 years, and most of them went in 2007, 2008, 2009, so a lot of them are coming due. You keep your NEZ for your 15 years. At the end of the 15 years, you would just go to the permanent 17% cut under the land value tax, and we wouldn't do any future NEZs. We would get the entire city on a uniform structure. So if you have an NEZ, you keep it, and you get the benefit of whichever tax is better for you.
All right, thank you, Rep. Holdney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative and Mayor Duggan, for being here today. My question is regarding parking, and it's explicitly listed in your proposal here and in the bill. And of course, for those of us that travel to Detroit to witness our marvelous Detroit Lions, Tigers, Wings, and attend concerts, parking is a premium. And my question would be, how are those properties currently assessed? Would their income also be subject to city income tax? And then, third in that series of questions would be back to the picking winners and losers, and if this would benefit large developers or parking garages over those what would be referred to as small businesses. And then an unrelated question, if you will, would be how strongly you feel with city council.
Again, so city council will have the opportunity in November to decide whether the place is on the ballot. When you tell 97% of Detroit homeowners they're going to get a 17% property tax cut, and should they have a chance to vote on it, I'm pretty confident that will not be a difficult vote when that comes. But let's again back up to parking lots. There are no winners or losers. Everybody is going to be assessed exactly the same number of mills on their land. Today, the taxes on land in this city are extremely low. And you've probably seen the studies where Detroit is closest to the highest in the country percentage of downtown that is surface parking lots. You don't see the number of surface parking lots in other major cities in the country. Why? Because we made it financially attractive for you to leave a surface lot there and be taxed next nothing. They do pay income tax to the extent they report the cash sales of the parks and they pay their income tax. In theory, they're paying income tax on the employee collecting the money. They're, in theory, paying a corporate income tax. But here's what you want. We're already hearing the conversation. Our two largest individuals who are going to see tax increases are supporting us because they intend to move from surface parking lots to development. Today, we financially incentivize it to keep it a parking lot. Under the new plan, you should be building on that site. That's what real cities do. And so those who stay surface lot will pay a higher tax. I don't know if your bill will go up from $60 to $65 to see a Lions game. I'm hoping that people still want to pay that kind of premium for the Lions as they do right now. It may go down in the future if it doesn't continue that way, but right now it's good. So what, may it go up $5? Yeah. But what you're more likely to see is the kind of development we're seeing at Huntington Place, where they built 8 stories of structure and then a 20-story building on top of it. That's the way real cities build, and that's what we want to see more of.
Great, thank you. And because they are currently assessed with the improvements if they have like a guard shack.
Yep.
And
the,
asphalt.
even the asphalt and the striping. So the reason they show a 50% increase on average versus the 100% pure vacant land is the amount of improvement they have done. So as I say, we didn't pick out the 50, we're just averaging this. But the more improvements you have already, the better you do. The less improvements you have, the more your taxes go up. And that's what we should be doing, right? We don't want to leave that land vacant.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this would be our last question. Rep. Britzy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the, Rep. Young, you talked about who does this apply to, and you say anyone can use it. I think that there might be communities that would be concerned about it being implemented as a way to force farmers out. So I guess I would be one representative that would be interested in maybe seeing that limit put on for cities over 500,000. And that was what I wanted to say.
Okay. It's a comment and not a question, but again, that's why we're here. That's the nature of having testimonies and hearings to find out, get questions answered, asked and answered. So we'll absolutely look at that. As the mayor already said, we're open to that. It can be Detroit only, it can be for the state. It's whatever the legislature decides, and that's what we're here to do. Thank you, Representative Brixey.
All right. I just want to thank you, Rep. Young, for bringing this before us, and Mayor Duggan. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you both. Now I'm going to read in the cards.